The book is called Lincoln's Final Hours. It's obvious what it's about, but why Lincoln? The person who wrote it is a local author, Kathryn Canavan, used to write for the News Journal. And so let me ask you, first of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So many things have been written about Lincoln. Why did you choose to write this book?
I was visiting Peterson House one day, and I realized that Peterson's boarding house is where the president died. He was carried across from Ford's Theater, where John Wilkes Booth shot him, because it was Good Friday, and the doctors instantly calculated that it would not do for a president of the United States to die in a theater on the most solemn day of the liturgical year. So they carried him across to this boarding house across the street. And one day I was visiting there, and I realized, Larry, that it continued to operate as a boarding house for many years after the assassination. So someone slept in that bed the next night. So I asked the guide who slept in the bed. She gave me the name, and she said nobody had ever written a book about the boarders and the visitors. I later found out they included 3 congressmen, the man who had the country's largest collection of pinned beetles, and John Wilkes Booth. He was a friend of many of the actors who lived there.
He was staying there?
He never stayed, he never had a room there, but he actually, a few weeks before the assassination, he had slept in the same bed where President Lincoln died, and he had curled up for a nap under the same coverlet.
It's fascinating that you said they had to take him from the theater to the Peterson house because they didn't want him to die in a theater. I don't get that connection. What would be so bad about dying in a theater? Well, let me ask you another question first. They knew he was going to die.
They were sure from the very beginning. When Dr. Leal, the 24-year-old doctor who kept him alive for 9 hours, which was quite a feat at that time, he knew immediately that there was no hope.
And what was wrong with being in a theater? Why did they feel that they had to transport him?
Well, it was in 1865. Actresses were considered almost prostitutes.
Really?
The theater was not considered a occupation you'd aspire to. In fact, John Wilkes Booth's mother was giving her children all manner of lessons so that they would not become actors.
Wow.
She wanted them out.
Now, you were able to discover, and it's interesting because you can tell you were a reporter. That's a great question you asked at the Peterson house, and it's a sign of a good reporter that you're surprised nobody else asked it. And apparently you are the only one that asked it, and it led you on this journey. From there, you were able to find out many things that have not been reported about that. Well, give me a couple. Well,
John Wilkes Booth's best friend, John Matthews, who was a comic at Ford's Theater, he actually lived just upstairs in the house where the president died, in Peterson's boarding house. Also, C.D. Hess, who was about I think he was 27. He was the theater manager at Grover's Theater, which was on the other side of the town. After it was announced that the president had been assassinated, he immediately, as soon as he got the crowd out of his theater, he telegraphed Leonard Grover, who was visiting New York, and said, the president was shot in Ford's Theater. Thank God it wasn't ours.
And this is the first book you've written?
It is.
Is there another one in you?
I've got nothing yet.
No, do you want to write again?
I would love to.
And are you going to do an historic nonfiction book again?
I'm fascinated with Lincoln. I think the reason there have been 30,000 books about him is that he continues to fascinate. You know, he appeals to the better angels of our nature. He really does. Especially this year, think about a president like Lincoln.
Can I give you an idea? He was brought to Philadelphia, his body.
His
body was brought to Philadelphia, and it was kept upstairs at what now is an Irish pub. For a time, it used to be. It used to be. If you go there, they'll tell you about it. It used to be a funeral home, and it was kept there, and there were African-American soldiers who carried the body who were trained outside of Philadelphia. So the whole thing of what happened in Philadelphia, I don't think it's been written about, and it's a wonderful story. And I don't have the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, you
That's
should look into
great.
it. It's a great story. Again, I love Lincoln. I'm going to read this book, and thank you for writing it and being a great reporter, and from being from Delaware. How can people get it?
It's available from University Press of Kentucky, the publisher, on Amazon, in the local Barnes and Nobles.
Oh, so it's everywhere. And then go to Amazon.
And in all
Barnes
the
and Noble.
independent
Great.
bookstores,
Congratulations.
including 9th Street.
And 9th Street?
Down the street, yes.
Wonderful, in Wilmington.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Kathryn Canavan, author of Lincoln's Final Hours, and if you are a Lincoln file, it's a book you should have, because there's never before found facts about the final hours of Abraham Lincoln's life. When we come back, we'll talk to another booming local celebrity who is hooked to the NFL through their feet when the Delaware Way returns.